Welcome, I'm Darren, and I'll be your guide today as I look at the 1993 Ted Williams baseball card set. And I'm going to look at just 1993 in part because this is going to take a fair amount of time, and the 1994 card set would really push it kind of long, but I also really want to take the time to give this card set the respect that I believe it deserves. There were three card sets that were Ted Williams card sets, and all three of them are kind of off on the side. The first one was the very first Fleer card set in 1959 that was a tribute to the then retired Ted Williams. And then in the 1990s, there were two more card sets that were created because Ted Williams, in the 90s, he wanted to leave a legacy for his kids. So he wanted to create a card set that also left a legacy for the baseball that he knew. And that was what the Ted Williams Card Company was created for. So obviously it's completely different from the Fleer set. The Fleer set just happens to exist, but there are three card sets that are Ted Williams card sets, just so that you know. And the whole nature of the card set in 1993, the very first set that he made, was built around the idea that we as collectors were starting to get fascinated by older cards, or older players. Now, in the 80s into the 90s, it was the older cards we were fascinated by and the big stars. But as we were heading into the 90s, there was more of an interest of the players from past years, in part because of Nolan Ryan and his tie across to another era, but also in part because of those older cards. We just wanted to get to know more than the Babe Ruths and Joe DiMaggio, Mickey Mantle, Hank Aaron, those guys. We all knew those guys, but we were getting more interested in some of the other players. And so that's what the Ted Williams card set, the very first card set, was built to do, because Ted Williams wanted to introduce us to the players that he knew so well. And so he created a card set that doesn't really look at the big names. You don't have Babe Ruth and Hank Aaron and Mickey Mantle. They're not in this set. Ted Williams is in the card set, as you would expect, but basically you have Willie Mays and you got Lou Gehrig. That's pretty much it in terms of the regular player cards. So the card set was built to familiarize us with the semi-stars. That's more kind of the way that it was focused. And they weren't slacking off on this. These cards are very, very, very well crafted. The cards it's kind of like a full bleed image, but basically they have a portrait that is ghosted into the back, and then they have a separate action shot in front of that. Very well crafted, a lot of work put into making these cards. You have a band at the top with the logo, down at the bottom you have the player name. That's the layout of the card, and it is very, very nice. And then on the card back, it's kind of a big circus affair. Lots of bunting. It's a celebration, I'll give them that. But the front, at least, is really nice. But to give you an idea of how much care was put into these cards, they're actually all embossed. That logo up at the top is embossed into the card. And embossing was very unusual. We really didn't have much of that leading up to this point. And so the card set is laid out into two groups. The first portion is the regular player cards of the legends, and then there are a bunch of subsets afterwards. And every single one of these has a checklist at the end of it, including the main card set. And you can see from the checklist that the way that they laid this card set out is every single team actually shows up in order. However, the order isn't what we're familiar with today, because Ted Williams wanted to capture the era that he knew. So that meant that the Oakland A's were actually in Kansas City, not Philadelphia. They were in Kansas City. And the Dodgers were in Brooklyn. And the Giants were in New York. And so you actually have the league laid out in a different order, even though some of the players did show up in the later iterations. They were still grouped with the same locations. So all the Giants were there with the Mets and the Yankees, even though there were San Francisco Giants included in the group. So that's the way that they laid the set out. It is by team, but it is not necessarily in the order that you're used to, which is a really nice element to the card set, because the other card set we had that did this was action-packed. And Action Packed did not have an order to the players. They were just spread all over the place, very haphazard, covering a wide expanse of time. So it's just a bunch of names that are gathered around, and you've got to do the heavy lifting of parsing through and understanding different eras, different teams, figuring all that stuff out. Ted wanted to at least pull things together to be in more of an order of a mid-20th century layout of the league. So it is helpful. I'm really glad they did that. So when you look at the different cards, they do span quite a bit of time. So you have, the Brooklyn Dodgers, and you have maybe it's the Kansas City or the Oakland A's. You got the San Francisco Giants. It's all laid out like this, and most of the players are from that window of time, from when Ted Williams played basically through the 1970s, but not entirely. And so you would also get Rogers Hornsby does show up in this card set. So there was quite a bit of variety to the card set that just looked different than we were used to. That's the key. This card set introduced us to baseball in a more dynamic manner of looking across the entire span of time. And that's something that is a great tribute to this card, or a great advantage to this card set. But like I said, the card set then, for the second half, it has a whole bunch of subsets. And what better place to start than right here with this league that we were just discovering. I mean, we didn't really even know about this league. We were starting to hear about it because we heard, we knew that players like Satchel Paige came from somewhere and they'd been playing. And we were starting to hear the name Josh Gibson. Die-hard baseball fans knew all about this. But for general baseball fans, this was something that was becoming more of a common dialogue, and we didn't really have a full understanding of the difference between the two leagues, to the tune that when you watch the movie The Sandlot, they have a black baseball player played by James Earl Jones who talks about how he was a teammate of Babe Ruth. Now, he's inspired by Josh Gibson, but Josh Gibson was definitely never a teammate of Babe Ruth, because Babe Ruth didn't play during the era of non-segregation. At least I don't believe so. I believe it was always segregated in baseball. I know that early in football they had a blend of players, and then segregation was added. But in baseball, I think it was always segregated, unfortunately. But still, the idea that you had these players that you didn't know about, that was the whole point. But as you can see from The Sandlot, it got kind of jumbled up. We didn't really have all the pieces together because we didn't really have much about it. And so here we have a whole subset that features stars from this league that we were still just learning about. And so this is among the first cards of a lot of these players. Obviously, Satchel Paige had Major League Baseball cards, but Josh Gibson I don't think ever did. So it gives us a great little gift very early on, and I'm not sure we got much of a gift for seeing these players in the years since. So it's a great little tribute. And this isn't the only instance of a league like this, because Sandlot wasn't the only movie that came out at this time. We also had a league of their own, which was also looking at a league that we hardly knew about. Obviously, it was a league of female baseball players during the war and, after the war as well. But that was another thing that we were basically just learning about. And guess what? He included them. So here is the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League, because that's the name they came up with. But here we have 4 different players from that league. And the cards they show on the front, they show a picture of the player from her playing days. And on the back, we actually get to catch up with her and see her now in the modern day. And I don't know if these four women were part of the filming of the movie, how all of that tied together. But we have 4 women who were players at the time, captured again. In fact, on the checklist on the back, they have all 4 women featured on the card back. So once again, we have rare cards of players that just don't show up in any other set. And Ted Williams wanted to make sure that these players showed up and we got to be familiar with these highly successful athletes that just slipped under the rug. So again, really cool what he was doing with this card set. And then the next set is more your typical bill of fare. It's the greatest hitters of all time, according to Ted Williams, and now you're starting to get into the big stars. This is where you're getting players like Babe Ruth. And, okay, well, in the case of Ted Williams, he was already in the main set, but this is where you get the players who you're used to. They show up here in the subset. And then they have the barrier breakers. And this is different from the league cards because in the case of the barrier breakers, these are players who were transitioning. These were the players you were more familiar with the names of. And so it's in some cases just another card of some of the players we'd already seen. But still, it's part of the story, and that's what he wanted to do. Ted Williams wanted to tell the story of mid-century baseball, and this is a part of it. It's really cool. And then the last insert set is called Going North. Well, I shouldn't say the last one, but the last one of old players is Going North, which captures the spirit of baseball in the early and mid-century because there was this ethereal quality of small town America. There's no way you can escape it. And you hear about these giants in baseball, these icons that are high, they're bigger than life. And yet at the same time, there was the dream that you could actually join them. You could leave town and become some big city star. And that's kind of what this card set is talking about. The humble beginnings idea that was a really big part of the world that Ted Williams knew in baseball. So again, telling stories about baseball. But the last subset is a two-part subset, so it's got a subset of a subset. And that is the Dawning of a Legacy, which is looking at two then current players. Juan Gonzalez was one of them, and the other one was Jeff Bagwell. 4 cards of each. Each one has a checklist, so 10 cards total. And these are the only then current players who are featured in the entire set. This is it. But he did throw a couple in to just kind of give a nod to some of the players of the current day, which is pretty cool. Nice little addition. And then that is the set. But before I get into the inserts, I got to talk about the pack fillers. And the pack fillers are that every single pack included Pogs. Now, if you don't know what Pogs are, bless you. Enjoy the wonderful mystery of not knowing, because it's a lot better when you don't know. I'm not going to get into it and spoil the fun. All that I'll say is that Pogs were one of the biggest fads of all time, lasted a relatively short period of time, thank goodness, died away completely, oh thank goodness, and it's basically little discs of cardboard. You can have a picture on the front and you can maybe have something on the back, maybe not, doesn't matter. And a few of these, there are a few cases where Pogs did enter into sports cards. Ted Williams was one of them, and so what you have, when they did this, they normally had a card dimension piece, basically chunk of cardboard with 2 punches of the Pogs themselves, and that's the way that they were laid out here. There's nothing on the back of the Ted Williams cards, that are the Pogs, just the front, and they have players, or they have a player and a team, or something like that, or just 2 teams, and so you get to see these older logos of different teams. But where this set is really amazing is the aforementioned league of the Black Barons, the Black Yankees, the Homestead Grays, these teams that we just knew basically nothing about. Well, now we actually have logos of every single one of these teams. And that's where this is probably the only time I'm going to say this. These Pogs are cool. They're awesome. I'm glad that they exist. I don't think I'm ever going to say that about Pogs ever again, but in this case, these are a treasure because it does give you this glimpse into a whole league that was just overlooked, and now it's coming to light. And so now I can get into the inserts. And the first insert set is called Etched in Stone. This is an insert set that they would use in different sets. And the idea is it's a look at a famous player who is etched in stone. And for 1993, that's Roberto Clemente. So the Roberto Clemente set, these cards, really nice. Full bleed, a little bit of design element on one side. You have some copper foil it's imprinted with some embossed text that you really can't read, but really nice looking cards. I love the way it looks. All of the cards are ES 1 through 9. Every one of the insert sets ends with a checklist. So this does, but it's 8 player cards of looking at his entire career. So really, really, really nice cards. And then they have another set that looks at, well, it looks at one player's career, but it's just the Brooks Robinson collection. It's actually not an etched in stone themed set. It's just Brooks Robinson's collection. And the Brooks Robinson collection, to me, I'm really glad I'm doing this now, because when I'm doing this video, it was just less than a week ago that he passed away. So it's very appropriate to be talking about him here in this video. I just think it's really interesting timing how it all lined up. Regardless, this is a look at his entire career. And in the case of these cards also came with autographs. Now I have to make a note about the autographs, which is that I think that the official autographs are the ones here that you see with the Prism seal. I don't know for sure. I haven't been able to track it down and verify, but I'm pretty sure that it's the Prism seal that is the official cards that were in packs. Since I didn't get one out of a pack, I don't know, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. But at any rate, the cards in the set did get autographed. And then they have a set called the Locklear Collection, LC1 through LC9, and these are works of art by the artist Gene Locklear. The pictures are a very heavy look with kind of ethereal quality to all these different players, and it's really great art looking at some amazing players, but just the weight of this art is so distinct, it's so unique. It's very different from what we saw at with Don Russ. In this case, it's just, it's really cool. I mean, I don't know what else to say. 8 cards, and then the 9th card is a checklist where it has a picture with all of the players that are featured kind of floating in the air behind these 2 young baseball players, these kids who are basically dreaming of being these stars, these superstars that they would love to be one day. So really wonderful little tribute to the passing of generations. And all of the Locklear cards are individually serial numbered on the card back. The only cards that were in this set that were done this way, but also in 1993 there were very, very few cases where serial numbers were used on cards, so this is a rare example of it, which is really cool. So then we move on to the last insert set, which is Memories. And the reason I call it Memories is because it looks at 4 different famous, or not famous, but kind of legendary baseball teams. Every single one of these 5-card series is 4 players in a checklist. The checklist is a very bold splotch of color for the team, and then obviously saying which particular team it is, and it's checklist, so it's checklist on the back. And then the player cards are full images with some writing on the back, and that's pretty much the way that the card set works. But the card set is of 4 different teams. It is the 55 Dodgers, 63 Dodgers, the 71 Pirates, and the 75 Reds, which really do a good job of capturing the whole range of what Ted Williams was looking at in populating this card set with players from different eras. But I got a note about it. There are 2 different Dodgers teams, but none of the players are repeated from one team to the other. So that means that there are 16 player cards in this 20-card set, and all 16 of those players are unique. Nobody gets repeated. And so that is the way that it was built, and it was also built so it can continue into 1994. Which leads me to 1994, which, like I said at the beginning, I'm going to be looking at that separately. Not for any other reason. I mean, I'd love to tack it onto this because the card set is very similar, but look, I'm running out of time. This card set did so much that is really not replicated anywhere else. It is a standalone card set with a standalone idea that is something that's sorely missed in all of sports. I can't think of any card set that really captured the spirit of presenting classic baseball players in the way that this did. It was a great gift, and I wish that it had been done more. But like I said, I'm going to be talking about the 1994 set in a separate video, and they also did sets for football and for basketball. Again, I'm going to do those in separate videos, so definitely look out for those videos for when they come out. Now, if you haven't subscribed, I do urge you to do so. Feel free to check out my other videos, and thank you very much for watching.